I remember struggling so hard when I first started learning AS physics. I remember not being able to keep up with the work. Everyone else was doing so well, but I was here struggling so hard. But that was all until I learned about these couple of tricks, which helped me get these results in my A levels, graduate high school early, and now I teach students how to get their dream A level results. So if you feel like you're struggling, if you feel like physics is so hard, just remember, you're not alone. With these couple of tricks, I'm sure you're bound to get these amazing results that you want, those dream results you know you can get. So the first principle that I want to talk about is the 80-20 principle, which is this principle that I learned about through this book called The 4-Hour Workweek, which is focusing on the most effective tasks. So like 80% of your actions, your inputs produces 20% of your outputs, right? But then 20% of your inputs produce the majority of your outputs. So, if you just focus on those 20%, they'll be the most bang for your buck, so you get the most out of it, right? You get the most out of it. This can be applied to anything in life, especially your exams, your work, but for your exams, for your getting those dream A-level results, what do you think is the 80-20 for that? What do you think is the most effective task? Well, is it going to be highlighting notes? Is it going to be writing down and copying down notes? Is it going to be reading the textbook? No, probably not, right? It is going to be doing the past papers, right? Doing the past papers and applying the knowledge that you have, learning and then applying it through these past questions. You're lucky in that you're doing Cambridge and that there are so many past exams available for you. There's 20 years of past exams that you can do. You can go through all of those. There's hundreds of past papers that you can go through. And doing those would be the most effective task. Because remember, especially for like a topic like physics or maths, physics especially, physics is like a very application-based topic. It's very much something that requires you to use your brain, to use the knowledge that you have and apply that to a new scenario. You can't just memorize your way through it. There are obviously definitions you have to memorize, but you can't just memorize the kind of answer. You have to be able to apply and use this formula, understand what a lot of this formula means. Why does this formula happen? And the only way you can really practice a lot of that is through doing those past papers. Doing these past paper questions from the Cambridge himself will be the exact kind of questions that you're going to do, the same kind of style, format, the same kind of themes, right? That will be the best way to properly prepare you for getting that dream results, getting those exams. Doing these past papers as well can help you predict what's going to be on the next exam as well. So for example, if you notice a couple of topics are missing from these past exams, maybe you could think, I could predict that this year will probably have this kind of topic. Maybe, for example, for these kind of recent years, that astronomy was only added recently. And so they're probably going to add more emphasis on astronomy and add some more questions onto that. So maybe you could study that a little bit more. So could create some like educated guesses, but try not to rely too much on those because those are guesses, right? But with this 80-20 principle, the most effective task, you should honestly be only doing that. Focus only on doing the past papers. If you could only do one thing, do the past papers, right? Like, I don't think that you should be spending so much time doing other stuff because there is a big opportunity cost in that as well. If you spend 2 hours making flashcards, you could have gone through 2 test papers in that kind of time as well. You could have studied your other subjects. You could have studied like biology or whatever, your maths as well. There's always an opportunity cost to doing something that's not very productive, that doesn't produce you much results, right? So if you spend time doing like something that's not very effective, you're wasting your brain energy and you're going to spend more time, which might take away time from other subjects as well, right? You're using a lot of brain energy because, even just studying that way is not easy. But then you're actually using up a lot of time as well. You're using up a lot of time that you could use to study other topics, like your other subjects as well. Remember, you're not just in physics as well. I just have to emphasize this. And the number one thing that you should be doing is just the past papers. If you do something like, on the order of 20, 30, 40 physics past papers, then you're probably going to get an A star. But with that, enough practice to do that. The physics can't change that much, right? The past papers can't be that different. Eventually, you'll see where it repeats, which ones are common. Reinforce the ideas that you've learned in class, and you'll become way better at applying them. So tip number 2, when you're doing these past papers, is to actually think like a marker, right? So think like a marker, right? So when you read these kind of questions, For example, there's an explain question, right? Explain this and this and energy changes and what happens to the particle or whatever, right? They seem kind of vague, but the trick with these kind of questions is understanding what they actually want, right? You can yap all about momentum and that kind of stuff, but if it's still focusing on velocity or acceleration, then, it's not going to be right? It's not going to be correct. So you have to underline, think, what exactly does it want, right? You look at the kind of question. What exactly does it talk about it? What object does it talk about? What's the subject? What kind of points does it want? Also, when you look at your own question papers, when you're marking your own question papers, think like a marker, right? So follow the points. So you got one here, but you missed this point, for example. And so if you follow the mark scheme and think and look at what exactly that they want, what exactly does the marker want from this kind of question? You'll build up that intuition so that you'll be able to predict and know what to write in the next question, right? You'll be much better able to write out these explained questions confidently in the future. The third tip is to remember that, honestly, a lot of this is just maths, right? It's the equation, writing out the equation, doing all of that. Make sure you write it out when you're doing your working. Make sure you're doing that. By the time you get to the exams, most of the mistakes that will happen will probably just be you typed it in your calculator wrong, you wrote down something wrong, and then, something happened, right? You should be very good at doing maths and rearranging and all these kind of things that, if you feel like you're not doing well in maths, for example, then you need to practice that. You need to practice doing well in algebra, rearranging equations, being able to do everything like that. Also, just make sure that before you put it into your calculator, write it out, right? Write it out so you don't put something in wrong. Make sure what you wrote down is correct. And from that, you're going to help remove any careless mistakes or any random errors that you're going to get. Another one, which is I personally really like, because I like drawing, right? My favorite one is just draw out a diagram, right? And this really helps me with forces, right? Thinking about directions. What direction does the magnet push this particle, right? Writing it out will help sense check what you're thinking, right? It'll help you build your own judgment as well. It'll help think, is this logical, right? Does this make sense? Does it make sense that the sum of the forces don't really add up? It's both of the forces are facing this way, right? Maybe it doesn't, right? Especially for these kind of momentum questions, try drawing it out and understanding what's actually happening. So that will give you a much better understanding of that. This will help build up your own judgment that you can use for later. This is the great thing about physics, is that you can use your own judgment as well. Remember, you can think, is it correct for a neutron to weigh 2 grams, right? If you calculated that, that's probably not right? Does that make sense? Probably not, right? So yeah, you did something wrong. That's the great thing about physics, because with maths, right? Maths is just numbers, so they don't really mean anything, right? So you can actually sense check and you can think, oh yeah, that actually makes sense. And this is just something that you have to develop through doing more past papers and understanding some of these values a bit more. Doing these and understanding the concepts to think yeah, this actually seems a bit reasonable, right? It could be in this value. This is also a good method for doing multi-choice as well. Thinking, that one doesn't look right, that one doesn't look right. So you just cross them off. Yeah, it can't be those two, right? So then that leaves you with a couple options as well. That helps. It's like an educated guess as well. Another tip which still helps me in uni exams nowadays is actually just getting very familiar with the equation sheet, right? Looking at the equation sheet. Because I remember sometimes I would, you'd get a bit of a brain block, right? I'll do my test. I remember doing a test one time and I'll think, wait, what actually is this, right? Is it this equation or this, what actually do I do here, right? And I wasn't really sure, but then I remember oh yeah, it talks about velocity, it talks about mass, and so it must be kinetic energy. It's just because I got that from just staring at the equation sheet, right? I was just staring at the equation sheet and I'm thinking what do I actually have? And so maybe just look at the equation sheet if you're a bit lost, right? Just have a look at that. Make sure you get familiar with it so you can find those equations in case that you forget on the test day. So make sure you know which ones are there. Make sure you get familiar with what's actually there as well. So just looking at the test sheet can give you some inspiration there as well. The next step, which I'm sure a lot of teachers have told you, is just to get the easy marks first. So when you're doing the test, right, when you're doing the exam, You don't want to get bogged down on a question, right? You don't want to do a question and then get demotivated because you don't understand. I'm like, what thing could this be? You don't want to get stuck on a question, right? You want to just move on, right? And you don't want to get stuck on a question and then not have enough time to do the rest of it, right? So what you should do is you don't actually have to do the questions in order, right? You can just do question by question and do the easy questions first. Just fill out those definitions that you remember so that you don't have to think about them later, right? So fill out the definitions, do the easy questions first, and then worry about the hard ones later. So, if you don't get the hard one, that might be like 3 marks lost. But if you don't finish the paper, that might be like 10 marks lost, right? Get those easy marks, like writing out the equation for this paper or writing out your working, right? That's simply, even if you get the question wrong, that will still be like 2 marks, right? That will still be better than like getting everything wrong, right? Don't slack off and make sure you write it down so that you get those easy marks, right? Also on the topic of definitions, Cambridge has a lot of very specific definitions that you might have to remember. There are like hundreds. There's like so many definitions, like maybe like 100 of them, I think, right? Something like that. And so if you want a good way to do it is to actually just revise it and use something like flashcards, right? This is ideally something you would have done very early on, right? This is pure rote memorization that you can just practice, right? So I know this one, I know momentum, I know electric field or whatever, right? You creating those flashcards, preferably digitally, using something like Anki, means that you can just like go through a pile whenever you're bored, and you can just reinforce that idea inside your brain. Obviously, eventually, if you do enough past papers, you're going to memorize these already, right? To be honest, I didn't really know much about flashcards back then. I didn't really use them. I just did past papers. So this is something I've heard has done very well for a lot of people. All of these study tactics sound great and all, right? But I talk a lot more about them on like my other videos and in my course below. Have a look at that, top link in the description below. But if you're struggling to create some motivation for yourself, you actually have to remember that, yeah, it is kind of hard, but you have to remember the bigger picture. Remind yourself of the long term, of what you actually want to achieve with this, right? Physics may not be your favorite subject, and so you might not find it so intrinsically fun, right? Like, that's completely understandable. But you're doing it and you chose to take this hard path. And so why did you decide to take it, right? Why did you want to do it? What kind of goal would you want to achieve with this, right? You have to remind yourself of that goal, right? So, I had that dream. I had that thought, like I was thinking like, oh yeah, I wanted to go to this university, this prestigious university and study this course, which required great grades, right? I really wanted to achieve that. That's what I wanted to do. And so me studying well and doing well in physics was part of that, right? And so that's why I studied really hard for physics. So I wanted to do really well I wanted to study an engineering program. So I thought, yeah, I really needed to do well in physics. And that was part of it, right? Even though like sometimes I found physics annoying, I was motivated to study. Reminding myself of that goal and imagining myself going to that university, imagining myself getting those dream results, getting into that program, right? Getting those dream results was part of the plan. So that always kept me motivated to have like that kind of sense of purpose, right? That sense of purpose, like, yeah, I'm going to get that dream result. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to get into that dream meeting, right? Always reminding yourself, yeah, this is part of the plan. This will help you remind you of why you're doing this, why you're waking up to study early, why you're working hard, even though it may feel a little bit difficult, right? I had this goal that I felt like I was progressing towards, right? And, every day I'd track my progress. I would be like, I'd track down how many past papers I did. I'd, try and track my progress to see how consistent I was with doing past papers, right? I'd habit trackers as well. All these little things which help me motivate myself, which help me think, oh yeah, I actually really want to work hard on this, which help me, do more of the hard work and study harder as well. And so if you've watched through all of this video, you're already on the right track, right? You feel worried about your A-level physics, but you watch this whole video. I'm sure like you already know a lot of this kind of study tips that I talked about today, but a lot of it's just reminding yourself, yeah, you should start to implement this more. And if you're watching this kind of content, you're already well on your way to success, right? It's already within your mind, you're already thinking, yeah, I need to work hard. I should be doing this. I need to work harder. Yeah, you're already on the right track. I'm sure you're going to do very well. And so if you thought this video was helpful, have a look at the top link in the description below. There's like a course that can help you. I'm sure it's going to help you more. But just remember, you're already on the right path. Thank you for watching. I'm sure you're going to do well. See you later. Bye-bye.